Good evening. On behalf of the American Association of University Women and the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you to the candidate conversations for the office of Secretary of State. Tonight we have two gentlemen with us who are vying for that position and will introduce themselves to you. First of all, I'd like to go over what the general rules that they received ahead of time are, just so you know what rules they're working under. I asked them to be respectful of each other's opinions and answers, to keep responses as concise as possible so that both of them can get their equal time to speak. If they tend to go over 2 minutes for any one answer, we'll notify them to wrap up quickly. Remember, this conversation taping is only for 15 minutes. Feel free to respond to what your opponent has said. This is, after all, a conversation. You can disagree on issues, but leave personal attacks for another time and place. Note, you are welcome to agree with your opponent. Okay, now we'll ask you each to introduce yourselves and tell the audience a little about yourself so that the viewing public can get to know you on a personal level. Julian, would you like to start, please?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us here today as well. I am Julian Bradley. I am the Republican nominee for Wisconsin Secretary of State. Prior to running for this office, I was the chairman of the Republican Party of La Crosse County, and I'm currently still the vice chairman of Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District. I work for a Fortune 150 company where I manage a medium-sized team of employees, and I've been there for a little over 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary LaFollette, if you would give an introduction to yourself.
Hello, folks. It's great to be here. Thank you, Julian, for joining us, and Joan for coming up with this idea. I'm Doug LaFollette, as you can imagine. I'm Secretary of State at the moment. Before that, I was a state senator from the Racine-Kenosha area where I lived, and I taught at the university campus called Parkside. I was a chemistry teacher there. And I was in childhood in Milwaukee, and now I live in Madison, which is close to the office. I can walk to work and back every day, and I enjoy that very much. So it's great to be here.
Okay, thank you. All right, our questions to start with. And this one probably will take longer than some of the others, so I won't expect you to totally limit to 2 minutes on this one. The voting public is not always aware of what the office of the Secretary of State actually does for the state of Wisconsin. And Doug, let's start with you. What does the Secretary of State actually do?
Well, that's a good question, and there are actually two answers. There's what we do now and what we used to do and what we should do. When I was first elected, the Secretary of State in Wisconsin handled a lot of important duties. And all across the country, Secretary of States have those responsibilities to register corporations, trademarks, notaries, Uniform Commercial Code, a lot of important things that relate to business and helping businesses get started and businesses operate. Now, due to the desire of a couple of Republican governors who wanted more power to themselves, they took those duties away from the Secretary of State and put them in a new agency where they could appoint people to run those agencies and pay them very high salaries. So what is left in the office now is very little. We handle the records of the legislature, we handle governor proclamations and governor records, we handle apostiles under the Hague Convention, and a few other of those kind of administrative duties.
Okay, now,
and it's my position in this election that it's very important to restore those duties to the office, because if we want to be really open for business and compete with the rest of the country, we should make it easy for people to find corporations and trademarks, etc. And they still call the office looking for them, because all across the country, it is Secretary of States that have those responsibilities.
okay. And Julian, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. This is one place where we do agree, is that some of these duties should be restored to the office. However, where we disagree is the amount of time and who and what has caused them to be removed. It's my opinion and my position, the Secretary mentioned that it was Republican governors that have removed the duties and responsibilities, but it hasn't been Republicans that have been in power for the state the entire time that my opponent has been in office. And even under the Democrats, these duties and responsibilities were not restored. Over the last 36 years, we've seen those things removed. I think it's time for new leadership, a new vision, and a new voice in the office that can work across the aisle, work with the Republicans, work with the Democrats to get these duties restored and to really bring value back to the office for the taxpayers.
Okay, when I read about the office of the Secretary of State, it's a four-year position, if that's correct, and the Constitution requires you to maintain official acts of the legislature and governor. That still is true?
Right?
Okay.
That's what I spoke to.
That's what you spoke to. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that my reading was correct. And there are a number of different statutes that you have to keep up. Is that also correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right, so that you look at the Blue Book, it's the Wisconsin Blue Book, which for anybody who doesn't know, that's all the laws and rules and regulations that they need to work with. Okay, good. All right, if there's anything else you want to add to that as we go along, please feel free. The next question is that there has been a lot of bitterness and mean-spirited partisanship in the state of Wisconsin, as well as Washington, D.C. And if you are elected as Secretary of State, what is one thing you can personally do to help heal the rift between the parties? And Julian, we'll start with you, please.
Okay. Well, I'd like to begin, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I was the chairman of the Republican Party of La Crosse County. And La Crosse County is known for, especially in the city of La Crosse, leaning more Democratic. So as a Republican, it's a little bit of a difficult area to discuss politics. However, I've been very successful, and I was successful as chairman, by working across the aisle. While even though the Republicans have been in control the last 4 years, I did work with my Democratic counterpart in La Crosse to start a bipartisan Toys for Tots drive. It's just one of the things that we've been able to do to kind of heal the community and remind them that while we may disagree and we may differ on positions, it's important that we come together and do what's right for the people. As an elected official, that is your job. That's the kind of leadership that I'll bring to Madison.
Thank you. And do you respond to that?
Well, I think I've never been a partisan Democrat. I run as a Democrat, but I often irritate Democrats as well as Republicans because I've always been more issue-oriented. And sometimes the issues that I've been in favor of or been supporting, either as a state senator or a secretary of state, didn't make all Democrats happy either. And in fact, to go back to some of the things that my opponent mentioned about the duties, when Governor Thompson, a Republican governor, tried to take the duties away the first time, the Republican-controlled Joint Finance Committee, which I worked with very closely, voted against it. They thought it was a bad idea, but the governor was able to twist enough arms in the political way to get what he wanted. So I've always worked with Democrats and Republicans. I met with Governor Walker, actually, to discuss this issue, and he was interested but said it was not something he was on his agenda at the moment. He's had other agenda items.
Okay.
May I reply to that?
Certainly. Yes.
There's a time lapse that's missing, and it's when Governor Doyle was in charge, and duties and responsibilities still were not restored to the office under a Democratic governor with the Democrats in control. And that's a key point to why I'm running, sir, is that I think more needs to be done to be reaching out to our legislature and to the governor. And when we last spoke, you mentioned you didn't spend time with the legislature this last term. You focused on the governor. And now we still have this time during the Democrats being in control where nothing happened. And it said we did have an opportunity to discuss things. I would just like to know what would make this different than what's happened previously, where no action has been taken. Because I have a plan, and I'll be happy to discuss that, and I've discussed it nonstop. But I've not heard a plan, sir, and I would very much like to know.
Well, the trouble is it's very hard to get the attention of the legislature and the governor, be Democrat or Republican. And I've talked to Governor Doyle about this when he was governor, and his agenda, again, was other things. He was trying to balance budgets and deal with taxation. So in all due respect, I hope you don't have a chance, but if you do have a chance, you'll find out it ain't as easy as you think it is to get the legislature of both parties to come together on something that is unimportant in terms of restoring these duties, in their opinion. They're worried about the deficit and balancing budget and all kinds of emotional issues, etc. So it's not that easy, and I've worked hard at it. I think I have been very successful in stopping them from eliminating the office. That's been a big battle we've had to fight, and I've worked with the legislature a number of times to get them to not support the idea of eliminating the office, which would be a very bad idea in my opinion.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, my
Go
question
ahead.
still was unanswered, is what is different this time? Sir, you've been there for 36 years. That is quite a long time, and it's a great career you've had, I would suppose, but we still haven't seen the change. And that's what I think the people are looking for. I just came from rallies up north in Hudson and Wausau, And people are talking about how we need change here. We need somebody that they feel is working for them. And if you elect Julian Bradley as Secretary of State, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody that's working every day on behalf of the taxpayers. And we're going to do something different. We're going to keep pestering them and make sure that the legislature understands that this is important. When you collect a taxpayer salary, your job is important, and you need the right person with the right leadership to remind everybody of that. And I think that's one of the things that's missing.
Did you want to answer? Yeah.
I've worked hard at it, and I've worked hard with the people of Wisconsin all across the state. But you run against a brick wall when the legislature doesn't want to listen, be they Democrat or Republican. So I think my plan will be to take advantage of the fact that we now have some agreement across partisan aisle as what's important. And I think I plan to use that and work with some of the Republicans who I know who are open-minded and the Democrats who I think uniformly would support the idea, depending on the governor. It's going to depend on the governor. If we get a new governor, I think I have a chance of accomplishing something.
So, I'm sorry again, but now we're talking hypotheticals. It's only going to work if there is a new governor. If should Governor Walker win, are we to expect 4 years of the same? That's the difference that I provide, is that regardless of who wins, and hopefully it is Governor Walker, and he will be reelected, regardless, I'm going to work to earn the taxpayer salary, and we're going to make sure that the Secretary of State's office is functioning.
Okay, we can go maybe back to some of this at the end, but right now I'd like to look at some other things. Your party platforms are very different. I'm sure you both have had a chance to look at your party platforms. And what platform issues do you feel will affect the office of Secretary of State this coming year? And I'll start with you.
Well, to be quite honest, and I've looked at the platform, I don't think there are any, because the platform is full of lots of legislative issues, education, taxes, birth control, etc. None of those really relate to the Secretary of State's office. I do think that it's important that the Democratic Party, at my request, working with legislators, did put in the platform the restoring of the duties to the Secretary of State's office. So that's the one thing that I'm committed to, and I worked hard. I also worked with Republican friends of mine to try to get the Republican platform to include that, and that was not successful. So at least the Democratic platform supports the idea of restoring important duties to the office.
That's what you came up with. They did. What about you?
Thank you. I think what you're seeing here is a key difference between the Democratic Party platform and the Republican Party platform. Fiscal responsibility is is an issue for the Republican Party, and it's something that we strongly believe in. And one of the things that we need to do with this office is bring value. This is about fiscal responsibility. This is about a position that people have forgotten about and has just been left to sit there. Yes, people have talked about eliminating the office to try to save some money. We know that we're going to have the office for the next 4 years, so the person there needs to truly earn their salary. And that's the key issue that I think is going to come up in the next term.
Did you want to answer back to that, or?
Well, I don't see the point, really. I mean, the point being, there's going to someone be there to do the job. I do the job well. I've put together a great staff. We've got a great website. I respond to people. Just today we had 2 questions from people about voter ID, which I helped to respond to. I help the people of Wisconsin all across the state and work with them, and I have for years. So that's what I do to earn my salary. And the office doesn't spend a whole lot of money. We're program revenue. We generate the money that it goes to pay not only my salary, but the salary of the people I work with.
Okay, thank you. The budget is always constrained when planning for expenditures. How does the Secretary's office allocate funds? And Julian, we'll start with you.
Well, as the Secretary just mentioned, the budget of the Secretary of State's office is not very large. So what I'd like to talk about, though, is one of the places where we can certainly cut some from the budget, and that's moving the office back into the Capitol. That's one of the things I'd like to do. You know, I've got a 3-point platform of restore, reform, and rebuild, and the rebuild portion is about rebuilding the lines of communication to the legislature and to the rest of state government. And in order to do that, I believe the office needs to be plugged back into the state government, which would be plugging it back into the Capitol, which would provide a significant savings in rent that's being paid. So that's one place that I think we could really target and really do something well.
And
I hate to say this, but good luck.
Thank you.
Office
I appreciate it.
was in the Capitol, and the legislature, because they wanted more space, they were expanding, more staff, they removed the office. I fought that. In fact, I threatened to chain myself to the desk, which made lots of exciting news, but it didn't work. So that will not happen. There's no room in the Capitol for the Secretary of State's office. Now, as far as the budget, it is quite small. It's about $500,000. Half of that is for salaries, and the rest is for rent and for permanent property and supplies, for postage, etc., and for printing. And that's the main thing the office does. So it's a very small budget, but it's program revenue. We don't spend taxpayers' money. We generate money from the services that we provide to the people who come to the office.
Okay, thank you. Our last question, then we'll move to that. Why should the voters vote for you on November 4th? And I believe, Doug, it's your chance to start.
Well, I think my background and my qualifications are clear. I've been a successful small business person. I've been a state senator. I was a college chemistry teacher. I've operated and been the program director for a national nonprofit association. I've been Secretary of State and done a very good job. In fact, when I first was elected, we restored the office, we modernized it, built the best website in the country. We got accolades from all across the country about being a very effective and progressive Secretary of State's office. So those are the qualifications I bring to the office, and I think those deserve my election. I don't see that my opponent has those kind of qualifications.
Julian.
Thank you. And while it is true, I have never been Secretary of State, I do work for a Fortune 150 company in the private sector where I manage a staff that's more than 4 times the size of the current Secretary of State's office. And never in my time with this company have I had duties and responsibilities removed, nor have I had people discuss eliminating my job due to my performance. That's what I bring to the Secretary of State's office. We need competent leadership. We need somebody that's going to work on behalf of the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin. That's what I will do. I'm looking to reform, restore, and rebuild this office. I want to reform it by being active and transparent so people know who the Secretary of State is and what they're doing, and not just in election years. I want to restore not just duties to the office, but faith as well. And I talked earlier about rebuilding bridges to the other branches of state government. That's what I bring to the office, and that's what I look forward to doing on behalf of the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin.
If I could just add in conclusion that my commitment and my slogan for the many years I've represented people of Wisconsin is my most important duty or job is being there when they need help. And people know that. They contact the office every day with all kinds of questions and problems. When I travel around the state, people ask me good questions, we get them the answers. So that's my duty, and that's also my obligation to the people who have elected me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very, very much, both of you. As you can see, they have differences, and don't forget to vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having me.